My name is Margaret, but everyone calls me Maggie, and I'm 61 years old. I never thought I'd be standing in my own kitchen, clutching a teacup that suddenly felt too fragile, while my neighbor casually told me something that broke my heart. She said she passed by my daughter Emily's flat the other weekend and saw a yard sale spilling out onto the pavement. At first, I smiled politely, thinking it was just old toys or clothes she no longer needed. But then my neighbor listed the items: my grandmother's oak table, the crystal lamp I'd given her when she moved into her first place, and even a gold necklace that once belonged to my late husband. I felt the blood drain from my face. Those weren't just objects. They were memories, carefully chosen gifts, little pieces of myself I had passed on to her in love. And there she was, selling them off to strangers for pocket money. I couldn't breathe for a moment. It wasn't just the selling, it was the humiliation. Everyone who walked past must have thought I'd filled her home with things she didn't value. They must have thought I was a fool for giving so much. I stood there shaking, wondering what kind of daughter treats her mother's love like clutter to be bartered away. And I have to ask you, what kind of daughter does this to her own mother? I suppose I should start by telling you a little about who I am, because stories like this don't make sense unless you know the kind of life that came before. My name is Margaret, though I've been Maggie to everyone since school days. I'm 61 years old, a retired secondary school teacher, and a widow of 10 years. My husband Peter passed away far too soon, and since then, I've poured most of my time, energy, and money into making sure my daughter and her children had the life they deserved. I live in a modest but comfortable suburban house, the kind of place with roses in the front garden and a little porch where I sit with a cup of tea when the weather's fair. After Peter died, the house felt hollow for a long time. Teaching filled some of that emptiness until I finally retired at 60. Retirement for me has meant structure lists, receipts neatly filed away, routines that give me comfort. I budget carefully, plan my meals, and keep everything in its place. Perhaps that's why what happened later hurt so deeply. I'm a woman who remembers the value of things, not just in money, but in meaning. My daughter Emily, though I usually call her Em, is in her mid-30s. She's a single mother to two little ones, ages 7 and 10. Life has never been easy for her. The father of her children walked away years ago, leaving her with responsibility she wasn't prepared for. I stepped in as best I could, both financially and emotionally. Every time Em needed something, I tried to provide. If she couldn't pay a bill, I'd cover it. If the children outgrew their clothes, I'd take them shopping. When she first moved into her flat, I spent weeks helping her furnish it, buying sturdy furniture, pots and pans, even a brand new kettle, because I wanted her kitchen to feel warm and welcoming. Those purchases weren't just about practicality. They were gestures of love. I wanted her and the children to have the security and comfort I once had with Peter. I bought her a dining table large enough for family dinners, imagining the children doing their homework there while Em cooked. I picked out curtains that reminded me of ones my mother had chosen when I was a girl, hoping she'd feel a sense of continuity, of home. I also passed down treasures. There's a jewelry box that belonged to my grandmother, filled with heirlooms, brooches, a string of pearls, the gold necklace Peter gave me on our 25th wedding anniversary. I told Em these were hers one day, but I wanted her to have them early, to wear them, to feel their weight in history. She seemed grateful at the time, though perhaps a little indifferent, as though such things belonged more to my world than hers. Then there were the photo albums. After the children were born, I spent countless evenings arranging prints into thick albums, birthdays, Christmas mornings, even the messy, everyday moments. I thought they would be something the children could look back on when they were older, a record of love stitched into each page. I even gave him a spare set of my house keys. It was meant for emergencies, of course, but also as a sign of trust. I told her, "This house is always open to you, no matter what." At the time, I believed it. At the time, I thought family bonds could never be broken. Sundays became our tradition. Em and the children would come over for a roast beef or chicken, depending on the week. I'd make Yorkshire pudding, mashed potatoes, and always an apple crumble for pudding. Those meals were the highlight of my week. I loved watching the children race around the garden, their laughter echoing, while Em and I sat at the table talking about work, bills, and the little dramas of everyday life. Holidays were another time I gave freely. Christmas morning was always at my house. I'd spend weeks planning gifts, making sure everyone had something thoughtful. Em once teased me for keeping receipts tucked neatly in an envelope, but it wasn't about doubt. It was about habit. I've always been careful with money, because when you've lived through losing a husband and learning to manage alone, you cling to what order you can. But in hindsight, there were small cracks forming in those happy routines. Em would sometimes make comments that I brushed off at the time. She'd mention how her friends make quick money selling things online, or she'd ask casually, "Mum, do you really need all those old bits cluttering your place? They'd fetch a good price." She'd say it with a laugh, but something in her tone unsettled me. I'd answer, "Some things aren't about money, love," and change the subject. I didn't want to think badly of her. She was my daughter after all. Still, I noticed her struggles growing sharper. There were late-night calls about overdue bills, worries about rent, and whispers of jobs that never seemed to last. I tried to encourage her to budget, to make lists like I do, but she brushed it off. "I'm not like you, Mum," she'd say. "I don't want to live with receipts in little folders." I told myself her independence mattered more than my peace of mind. But deep down, unease began to creep in. I'd find myself double-checking what she took home after visiting. Nothing was missing, but the thought lingered. When she had the children in tow, she'd eye their toys and say, "They've got too much." Maybe I should do a clear-out and make some space. I should have asked more questions. I should have listened more closely. But I didn't. I wanted to believe the best of her. I wanted to believe that all the gifts, all the traditions, all the symbols of family I had built meant as much to her as they did to me. Looking back, I see those comments weren't harmless. They were warnings, small cracks in the foundation of trust. And though I ignored them, they were leading me straight to the day when I'd find out just how little my gifts truly meant in her eyes. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday, the sort of day when nothing should have shifted. I'd been into town for my usual errands, picking up groceries, posting a letter, and treating myself to a scone from the bakery. I hadn't planned on stopping by Emily's flat, but she lived just a short drive away, and I thought it would be nice to drop off some fresh fruit for the children. When I pulled up outside, something struck me at once. The curtains I had bought her, the cheerful blue ones with little yellow flowers, were gone. The windows were bare, and inside I could see a blankness that unsettled me. Still, I told myself not to jump to conclusions. Perhaps she was cleaning, or perhaps the curtains had simply been replaced. I knocked and let myself in with the key I still had. The silence felt heavy, too still for a home with 2 young children. I walked into the sitting room and stopped cold. The oak dining table, the one I'd chosen so carefully, was missing. In its place was an empty space, a faint mark on the carpet where it had stood. The shelves that once held books and ornaments were bare. Even the lamp with the crystal base was gone. My stomach twisted. I wandered through the flat, room to room, each step confirming what I dreaded. The sofa set I'd helped her choose, gone. The framed photos I had taken of the children, gone. Even the kitchen looked stripped back, pots and pans missing from cupboards I had stocked myself. I was standing in what felt like a shell of the home I had poured so much into. On my way out, confused and trembling, I ran into a neighbor, a kind woman I'd seen a few times before. She gave me a bright smile and said, almost too casually, "Oh, wasn't it clever of Emily to do that garage sale last weekend? She cleared out half the flat in a day." The words landed like stones in my chest. Garage sale. My gifts, the heirlooms, the furniture, sold on the pavement to strangers, like unwanted clutter. I managed a polite nod, but inside, something shattered. My neighbor had no idea she was describing the dismantling of my love. When Emily finally returned later that day, I tried to keep my voice calm. "Em," I said softly, "where's the dining table I bought you?" She barely looked at me. "Oh, Mum, I needed the space." It was too big for the room. She said it so quickly, as if that explained everything, as if love could be dismissed with a shrug. I swallowed hard, forcing myself not to snap. "And the lamp? The shelves? The photo frames?" She waved her hand, irritated. "Mum, don't fuss. I've been decluttering. Everyone does it. Decluttering." That was the word she used, as if those things hadn't been chosen with care, as if they weren't tied to memories of Peter or to birthdays and Christmas mornings. But it wasn't until I noticed the gap on her sideboard that the true wound hit me. The photo albums. The thick books of memories I had spent hours creating, gone. "Emily," I whispered, my throat tight, "where are the photo albums?" She didn't meet my eyes. She fiddled with her phone and muttered, "I'll explain later." Don't make such a big deal. And in that moment, I felt my heart break in a way I hadn't known it could. Not because of the money, not even because of the objects themselves, but because those albums were meant to be proof of love, proof of family. To see them treated as disposable was like being told my love was worthless. I left her flat with my shopping bag still in my hand, the fruit untouched. I drove home in silence, a hollow ache in my chest, wondering how I could have been so blind. When I got home from Emily's flat that day, I set the shopping bag down on the counter and didn't even bother unpacking it. The bananas, the apples, the grapes, everything sat there while I lowered myself into a chair and tried to steady my hands. My heart was racing as if I'd run miles. I couldn't stop seeing the bare walls, the empty shelves, the space where the dining table used to be. I've always been someone who looks for answers in paper. It sounds old-fashioned, I know, but that's the teacher in me. Receipts, bank statements, letters. These things tell stories if you let them. So I pulled out the folder where I keep everything, the one tucked neatly into the desk drawer in the sitting room. Inside were receipts for almost everything I bought Emily over the years. The table, the sofa, the lamp, even the children's bunk beds. Each one was a record of love, proof that I'd tried to make her life easier. I flipped through them slowly, my fingers trembling. I kept thinking, she sold them. She sold every one of these things, and worse, she hadn't told me. She hadn't even asked. At first, I told myself maybe I was overreacting. Perhaps she really had needed the space. Perhaps she was planning to replace the items with something better. But the photo albums, there was no excuse for those. They weren't clutter. They weren't replaceable. That thought gnawed at me like a rat at the edge of my mind. Over the following week, whispers began to reach me. A friend from church mentioned offhand that she'd heard Emily was struggling with money again. Another friend said she'd seen Emily on her phone talking about selling a few things online. My chest tightened. Could it really be true? One evening, sitting at my computer, I typed her name into Facebook Marketplace. I don't even know what I expected, maybe nothing at all. But there they were, listings under her account, photographs of furniture I recognized instantly. The oak table, the sofa, the lamp, each one described with little blurbs, good condition, quick sale needed. I clicked through in silence, numb, staring at price tags that looked insultingly small compared to the worth those items held in my heart. I checked Craigslist too, just in case, and found even more. My eyes blurred with tears as I scrolled, the words, "must sell fast," jumping out at me again and again. I felt sick. I wanted to call her, to shout, to demand answers. But something inside me stopped, a mother's instinct maybe, or just sheer disbelief. I didn't want to admit to myself that my daughter could betray me so casually. I kept hearing her voice in my head from years past. "Don't worry, Mum, I'll pay you back." Words she'd said whenever she borrowed money. She rarely did pay it back, but I never pushed her. I always thought she'd get on her feet one day, that she'd prove herself. But now, looking back, I saw the pattern. The casual way she dismissed gifts, the jokes about me keeping receipts, the little digs about clutter. The time she borrowed, always promising, never delivering. I'd ignored the warning signs because I wanted to believe in her. I wanted to see my daughter as good, decent, grateful. The doubt grew so strong that I began to look around my own home differently. When Emily came over with the children, I found myself watching her hands, noticing what she looked at. After she left, I would walk through the house, checking that everything was still in place. My jewelry box, the one I hadn't yet passed down, stayed locked in my wardrobe. I counted the pieces more than once, heart hammering as though I expected something to vanish. The thought alone filled me with shame. What kind of mother feels the need to guard her belongings from her own child? And yet, I did. There was one evening when she asked casually, "Mum, do you really need all this silverware? You could make a fortune selling it." She said it with a laugh, but I felt my stomach drop. I smiled weakly, changed the subject, but inside I knew this wasn't just banter. She had begun to see everything in terms of money, not memory. It was then I made a quiet decision. I walked to the little key hook by the door where my spare set hung. It was the set I had given Emily years ago, a symbol of trust. I took it down, slipped it into my handbag, and told myself I'd ask for hers back when I had the chance. Not in anger, not in confrontation, but simply because I couldn't risk it anymore. When the opportunity came, I chose silence. The next time she visited, I said, "Oh, love, I'll just swap your key for a newer copy. The lock's been sticking a bit." She didn't question it, just handed hers over. I kept it, of course, and gave her nothing back. It was a small act, but it felt monumental. For the first time, I put up a boundary, even if I couldn't bring myself to say the words out loud. I sat in the quiet of my house that night, the key resting in my palm, and wondered when exactly my daughter had stopped seeing my gifts as love and started seeing them as currency. The truth was closing in around me, and though I didn't want to face it, I knew I'd have to soon. Because if she could sell my gifts so easily, what would stop her from reaching deeper into the things that mattered most? For weeks, I tried to quiet the storm inside me. I told myself I could forgive the furniture, even the photo albums, though the loss gnawed at me every time I thought of the children growing up without those memories preserved. But then came the day I discovered something I couldn't explain away. It happened by accident. Emily had come over for tea, the children racing about in the garden while we sat in the sitting room. She dropped her handbag on the sofa, and when she went to check on the children, the bag tipped over. Papers spilled out across the cushion. At first, I only meant to gather them up neatly. But as I lifted a folded slip, my heart froze. It was a pawn shop receipt. My name leapt out at me, not in writing but in the description. Gold necklace, pearl brooch, assorted rings box included. My jewelry box. The one I had kept carefully hidden in the wardrobe until I passed it down. The one holding pieces of my past, and Peter's. I felt the room spin. I clutched the paper in my hand and waited for her to return. When she walked back in, I couldn't keep my voice steady. "Emily," I said, holding up the slip, "what is this?" Her eyes widened, then darted away. "Nothing, Mum." "Just a paper. Don't fuss. Don't fuss?" My throat tightened. "These are my things. My jewelry box. The necklace your father gave me." She shook her head too quickly. "No, Mum, you've got it wrong. That's not yours. It's something else." But the words rang hollow. The description was too exact, the list too precise. My knees felt weak. "Emily, why? Why would you do this?" she snapped then, her voice sharp. "I needed money, all right. You don't understand how hard it is. Bills, rent, everything piling up. I didn't think you'd miss it. Didn't think I'd miss it." As if the necklace Peter had clasped around my neck on our anniversary was just a trinket. As if the pearls my grandmother had left me were nothing but stones. I wanted to scream, to demand she march straight back and get it all returned. But instead, I just stared at her. I saw not only my daughter, but the little girl she once was, the child I'd read bedtime stories to, the teenager who used to curl her hair in the bathroom mirror and ask me if she looked pretty. That memory clashed with the woman before me now, who had sold off pieces of our family for quick cash. I pressed the slip back into her hand, my own shaking. "You've broken my trust, Emily. Do you realize that?" Her face softened for a moment, as if she might apologize, but then the wall came back up. "You've got plenty more. You'll be fine." Those words cut more deeply than anything else. You'll be fine. As if my grief didn't matter, as if my memories could be replaced by another purchase. I sat there, torn apart by two instincts, one to protect her, to understand her desperation, and the other to shout at her for treating me and Peter's memory like a cash machine. When she left that evening, I locked myself in my room and cried for the first time in years. Not just for the jewelry, though that loss stung like salt in a wound, but for the realization that I no longer knew the woman my daughter had become. And even then, I sensed this wasn't the whole truth. The pawnshop slip was a window into something bigger, something darker. But at that moment, all I could feel was the hollow devastation of knowing love had been sold to the highest bidder. The day after I found the pawnshop slip, I drove to Emily's flat, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. I couldn't sit quietly in my house pretending this hadn't happened. The jewelry was gone, yes, but it wasn't just about the things, it was about what it meant. About trust, about respect. Emily opened the door looking tired, her hair piled in a messy bun, the children's voices carrying from the back room. She forced a smile when she saw me. "Mum, twice in a week you're spoiling me." I stepped inside without returning the smile. The flat felt even barer than the last time. The dining table was gone, chairs stacked awkwardly against the wall, and a cheap plastic one sat in the middle instead. My heart sank. "Emily," I began softly, "we need to talk." Her eyes darted, defensive already. "If this is about that slip you found—" "It is," my voice cracked. "How could you?" "Those weren't just things. They were pieces of our family." "Of your father." Her jaw tightened. "You don't understand, Mum." "I needed the money. You'll be fine, you always are." The sharpness in her voice cut me. I steadied myself. "You don't get to dismiss this. Those heirlooms weren't yours to sell." Her arms folded across her chest. "You gave me that jewelry box years ago. You said it was mine." "Not to pawn," I shot back, my voice rising before I could stop it. "I entrusted it to you because I thought you'd treasure it. I never imagined you'd treat it like scrap metal." The children wandered in then, wide-eyed. Little Sophie clutched my skirt. "Grandma, where's the pretty lamp?" I liked the sparkles. I froze, my throat tightening. "How could I explain?" Emily forced a laugh. "We're just redecorating, sweetheart." But even at their age, they sensed something was wrong. Ben frowned, his small brow furrowed. "Why is everything gone, Mum?" Emily snapped at him too quickly. "Go to your room, both of you." The children scurried off, confused and frightened by the tension. I turned back to her. "Do you hear yourself?" Lying to them, making them think this is normal. Her eyes blazed. "What was I supposed to do, Mum? You think it's easy raising 2 kids alone? You think I can pay bills on thin air?" I needed the money. I took a breath, trying to steady my anger. "I'm not blind to your struggles, Emily. I've always helped. Do you think I don't notice the groceries I buy for you, the bills I've quietly covered, the money I'd slipped into your purse when you weren't looking?" Her lips pressed into a thin line. "And now you're throwing it in my face." "No." My voice softened. "I'm asking you to let me help properly. Let's sit down, go through your expenses, make a budget. We can." She cut me off, her voice sharp as glass. "There it is. Controlling Maggie. Always organizing, always telling everyone how it should be done. I don't need your pity or your spreadsheets, Mum. I just needed cash, and I got it." The word stung. Controlling. That's how she saw me? After years of bending, adjusting, giving, supporting, was that what I had become in her eyes? The silence between us was thick. I looked around the room, at the empty shelves where my gifts once stood, at the children's drawings taped crookedly to the wall in place of family photos. It hit me then. I wasn't helping anymore. I was enabling her recklessness, her habit of taking without valuing. That night I called a close friend, Marianne, who had known me since Peter was alive. I poured everything out, the furniture, the pawn slip, the fight. She listened quietly before speaking. "Maggie, you need to protect yourself. You can't keep pouring from an empty cup. Maybe it's time to step back, even if it hurts." The thought twisted my stomach. Cut ties with Emily, my only child? The very idea felt unbearable. But another voice whispered inside me, what if Marianne was right? The next time Emily came by my house, I found myself glancing around nervously. My eyes lingered on the china cabinet, the shelves of books Peter had loved, the silverware tucked away in its drawer. Would she see them as treasures or as potential cash? That night, while Emily was distracted helping Sophie with homework, I quietly went to the hall table and retrieved the spare house key I had given her years ago, just in case. I slipped it into my pocket. My hand shook, but I knew it was the right thing. I couldn't sleep knowing she could walk in at any time and help herself to whatever she pleased. I told myself it wasn't final. I told myself I was only protecting my home until things calmed down. But deep down, I knew something fundamental had shifted. I was no longer just a mother trying to support her daughter. I was a woman trying to survive the slow erosion of trust, one piece of furniture, one heirloom, one memory at a time. And the worst part? I didn't know if there was any way back. The truth came to me in pieces, not all at once. Like fragments of glass scattered across the floor, each one sharp enough to cut if I picked it up the wrong way. It started with a phone call from a woman I barely knew, a friend of Emily's, or rather, someone who had once worked with her. She sounded uneasy. "Maggie, I shouldn't get involved, but Emily's been seeing someone. A man, and he's not good news." My heart dropped. "What do you mean, not good news?" She hesitated. "He's the type who talks big dreams, but he's always asking for money. Emily was bragging about how he's going to take her and the kids on trips, get them a bigger place, but she's the one footing the bill. She said she was selling things to help him out." I ended the call with shaking hands, the pieces starting to align. The missing furniture, the pawned jewelry, the excuses about needing space. None of it had been about survival or even the children. It had been about him. For days I walked around in a fog. I replayed every conversation with Emily, every time she'd brushed me off, every defensive outburst. And in those words, I now heard echoes of someone else. Someone whispering promises of a better life, convincing her that all she had to do was give, give, give. Then, as quickly as he'd appeared, he vanished. Emily called me in tears one evening, her voice hoarse and broken. "Mom, he's gone." He said he needed time to sort things out, and he just disappeared. I sat down hard in my kitchen chair, the phone pressed to my ear. I wanted to rage at her, to scream, "How could you let him do this?" But all I managed was a whisper. "And what did he leave you with, Emily?" she sobbed. "Nothing. I've got nothing." I thought of the jewelry box, the dining table, the photo albums. Years of my love, gone to fund the lies of a man who hadn't even stayed. That night, I decided I couldn't keep avoiding the confrontation. This wasn't about one pawn slip or a few pieces of furniture. It was about the truth, the whole truth, and what we were going to do about it. I asked Emily to come over the next afternoon. She arrived looking haggard, her clothes crumpled, eyes ringed with exhaustion. The children trailed behind her, clutching their school bags, uncertain and quiet. I guided them into the sitting room with some biscuits and juice before leading Emily into the dining room. My house still held the weight of everything she had lost in her own. My solid oak table, the china cabinet, the old photographs on the wall. Every piece seemed to stare at her accusingly. I sat down and gestured for her to do the same. For a long moment, we said nothing, just the tick of the wall clock between us. Finally, I laid the pawn slip on the table. "This," I said, my voice steady, "was not about needing space. It wasn't even about needing money for bills, was it?" Emily flinched. Her hands trembled as she reached for the slip, then pushed it away. "Mum, please, no." My voice hardened. "I've pieced it together. The furniture, the jewelry, even the photo albums. You didn't sell them because you had to. You sold them because someone else asked you to, someone who promised you things he had no intention of giving." Her eyes filled instantly, tears sliding down her cheeks. I thought he loved me. He said he wanted a better life for us, Mum. For me and the kids. He said if I helped him now, we'd all be better off later." I closed my eyes, the weight of it pressing on my chest. "Emily, he used you. He used you, and through you, he stole from me. From your father's memory, from your children's heritage." She buried her face in her hands, sobbing. I know I'd been so stupid. I wanted someone to take care of me for once, to make things easier. And when he said he could do that, I believed him. I leaned forward, my voice sharp but trembling. "And at what cost, Emily? At the cost of everything I gave you? At the cost of my trust? Do you understand what you've done?" She looked up at me then, her face blotchy and red. I thought I was solving my problems. I thought if I just gave enough, if I just proved myself, he wouldn't leave. And now he's gone, and I've got nothing left. For a moment, I almost reached out. Almost gathered her in my arms like I did when she was a child after a nightmare. But I stopped myself. Because this wasn't just a nightmare she'd woken from, it was one she had built, choice by choice, lie by lie. I sat back, folding my hands in my lap. Emily, I need you to hear me. There are consequences to what you've done. I can't keep bailing you out. I can't keep handing you money, gifts, or second chances as if nothing's happened. Her eyes widened, desperate. Mum, please, I don't know what else to do. You'll figure it out, I said softly but firmly. Because from now on, there's no more free money, no more keys to this house. No more treating my love like an open bank account. If you want my trust back, you'll have to earn it. She sobbed harder, her body shaking. You can't just turn your back on me. I'm not turning my back, I whispered. I'm standing up. For myself, for your father's memory, for those children who need to see that actions have consequences. The silence after my words was heavy. Emily slumped in her chair, exhausted by her own grief. For the first time, I saw not just my daughter, but a woman who had been broken by her own choices and who would have to pick up the pieces without leaning on me to carry all the weight. I stood, my knees aching, and picked up the pawn slip. I slid it back into my pocket. Dinner's in the oven. Feed the children before you go, but after tonight, Emily, things have to change. And they will. She nodded faintly, unable to speak, and though my heart ached with love for her, it also steeled with something stronger, resolve. For the first time in years, I wasn't just reacting to Emily's chaos. I was setting the boundary that had been missing all along. 2 months later, Emily's world came crashing down. The landlord of her flat, tired of late rent and empty promises, finally served her notice. By the time the day came, the place was already stripped bare. No table, no chairs, no sofa, not even a lamp to soften the corners. The walls echoed when she spoke, her words bouncing back at her like reminders of everything she'd lost. I went with her that day, mostly for the children's sake. Sophie clutched her teddy, the only constant left, while Ben looked around at the empty rooms, confused. Where will we sleep, Mum? He asked softly. Emily broke then. She sank to her knees on the carpet, her shoulders shaking. I had seen her cry before, but never like that, never in the raw, hollow way of someone who had finally run out of excuses. And that was when it hit me. All those things she had sold, the furniture, the jewelry, even the photo albums, she thought they were her way out, her freedom. Yet here she was, trapped with nothing, the very act of letting go, leaving her more bound than ever. I couldn't leave the children homeless. I brought them back with me, their little bags packed with clothes and school books. Emily followed too, but I made it clear from the start, this was not a return to old patterns. At my kitchen table, the one she had once replaced with a flimsy excuse about needing space, I laid down the rules. You can stay here until you find your footing, but things will be different, Emily. I won't hand out money. I won't cover your mistakes in silence. If you want dignity, you'll earn it. Not by shortcuts, not by selling memories, but by showing up for your children and yourself. Her eyes filled with shame, but she didn't argue. Maybe she couldn't anymore. In the weeks that followed, I saw small shifts. Emily started applying for jobs, real jobs, not just daydreams spun by someone else's promises. She took cleaning shifts at first, then part-time work at a shop nearby. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hers, honest work. The children settled quickly in my home. I packed their school lunches, helped with homework, and tucked them in at night. They brought noise and life back into my quiet house, reminding me of when Emily herself was small. Some nights, I caught myself staring at Sophie's face as she slept, seeing echoes of the little girl I once cradled, the daughter I was still fighting not to lose completely. And Emily, though far from redeemed, began to change in subtle ways. She came home tired, but not defensive. She apologized without excuses. One evening, she even sat down beside me with a stack of job applications, asking for advice. That moment alone felt like the first crack of light after a long, stormy night. I won't pretend it was easy. My friends reminded me of my boundaries. Don't slip back, Maggie, Marianne warned. Don't let her take advantage again, and I promised her and myself that I wouldn't, because I had learned something too. I had spent years giving blindly, mistaking silence for love. I thought enabling Emily was the same as supporting her. But I see now it wasn't. It stripped us both of dignity, her of responsibility, me of respect. Not anymore. I kept the spare key locked away where only I could reach it. I kept my finances private, and when Emily asked for help, I made sure it was help she had earned, a lift to a job interview, a babysitting favor when she had a late shift, not money slid into her purse or heirlooms handed over without thought. Slowly, the balance shifted. She began to carry her own weight, however clumsily. And I, for the first time in years, felt the quiet strength of standing firm. Justice had not come in a dramatic courtroom or a fiery showdown. It had come in something quieter, almost poetic. Emily's shortcuts had left her with nothing. But in losing everything, she was forced to face the truth. There are no easy ways out, only the hard, honest road forward. And for me, justice was this: regaining my dignity, my voice, and the courage to say no. Because love, I realized, is not about giving endlessly until there's nothing left. Love is about boundaries, about respect, about teaching those we care for that dignity is earned, not bought. And maybe, just maybe, that was the gift Emily needed most. I used to believe that giving was the truest expression of love. If Emily needed money, I gave it. If she wanted something for her flat, I bought it. If she stumbled, I smoothed the path. I told myself that's what mothers do, but I've learned something I wish I'd known sooner. Love also means saying no. Love means setting boundaries, even when it hurts. Love means refusing to let someone use you, even if that someone is your own child. The hardest part of this journey wasn't losing the jewelry or the furniture. It was realizing that betrayal from your own flesh and blood cuts deeper than any stranger ever could. It leaves a scar that doesn't fade easily. And yet, I will never stop loving Emily. She is my daughter, and that bond doesn't break. But love doesn't mean blind giving anymore. It means standing firm. It means showing her that dignity comes from responsibility, not shortcuts or empty promises. I found my voice again. I found my dignity, and I've discovered that justice, in its truest form, isn't about revenge. It's about truth, boundaries, and the strength to say no more. So now I ask you, from one mother, one grandmother, one woman to another, what would you have done in my place?